There's a specific moment in a man's life, usually somewhere around 43, where he walks into his garage at 11 p.m., looks at the boat he financed last spring, looks at the truck parked next to it, and quietly thinks to himself, I think I'm doing pretty well. His paycheck has never been bigger. His title at work has never been longer. His kid just made the travel baseball team that costs the same as a used Honda Civic. By every visible measure, this is success. Here's the part nobody tells him. The man standing in that garage is, statistically speaking, in the single most financially dangerous decade of his entire life. Not his 20s when he was broke, not his 30s when he was tired, his 40s. The decade that looks like the win is actually the decade that quietly costs him retirement. My name is Nick, and today we're going to walk through the financial traps the 40s set up for men so cleanly that most of them don't even realize they're standing in one. Trap 1. The peak earnings illusion. Let's start with the trap that funds every other trap, because if you don't understand this one, none of the rest of them make any sense. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, men's median weekly earnings peak between the ages of 45 and 54. That's the data. That's not opinion. The number on your paycheck is mathematically as good as it's probably ever going to get, and your brain interprets that as, okay, this is who I am now. This is the new baseline, so you start spending like it. Here's the problem. Vanguard publishes a report every year called How America Saves, and the most recent edition says the average savings rate, including the employer match, is about 14%, which means the other 86% of peak income is getting consumed in real time by a lifestyle that's being calibrated to this exact paycheck. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but I've been working for 20 years. Surely my retirement account looks reasonable by now. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. The same Vanguard report shows the median 401k balance for participants aged 45 to 54 is $67,796. $67,000. That is the median, meaning half of working men in their 40s have less than that saved for retirement, at peak earnings with 20 years on the clock. So what's actually happening here is a kind of financial optical illusion. The income looks like wealth, the lifestyle looks like success, the garage looks impressive, but the balance sheet is sitting in the corner like an unpaid intern quietly screaming. And the wild part is, this isn't because men in their 40s aren't smart. They're some of the most competent operators in the economy. It's because the 40s are specifically designed by the way our culture talks about success, to convert income into stuff instead of into freedom, which brings us to where most of that converted income actually goes. Trap 2, the status truck. The truck. According to Kelley Blue Book, the average transaction price for a full-size pickup in late 2025 was $66,386. $66,000 for the average. Not loaded, not maxed out. Average. And according to industry demographic data, about 84% of new pickup buyers are men, with the average F-150 buyer being 55 years old, and the average Ram 1500 buyer being 50. So who is buying these things? Like, it's not a 22-year-old construction worker, despite what the commercials suggest. It's overwhelmingly a man in his 40s and 50s who has decided he has, quote, earned it. He uses it to drive 14 miles to a desk job. He hauls something in the bed roughly twice a year, usually a Christmas tree and a single bag of mulch. Now let's run the math, because this is where it gets fun. The average new truck loan right now is hovering around 7 years at roughly $900 a month. That is $75,600 in cash leaving your account, plus interest, plus insurance on a vehicle insurer's price like it might commit a felony, plus fuel for something that gets 19 miles per gallon on a good day. Add it up and you're looking at conservatively $90,000 of total cost over 7 years for transportation that, from a pure utility standpoint, a $20,000 used Toyota Camry could have provided. Take that $70,000 difference, invest it instead at a normal 7% real return, and by the time you hit 65, it's worth about $271,000. So the actual price tag on the truck isn't $66,000. It's $250,000 in retirement money paid quietly in monthly installments over the decade where you needed that money most. But hey, the chrome looks great in the driveway. Trap 3, the helicopter dad. Okay, so now your kid is 11 and he's good at baseball, or she's good at soccer, or one of them is doing competitive cheer, which apparently is now a thing that costs more than community college. According to the Aspen Institute's Project Play survey, family spending on youth sports rose 46% in 5 years, and the average parent now spends about $1,016 per child on their primary sport. For families in travel programs, that number jumps to $3,000, $5,000, and at the elite level, all the way up to $25,000 per child per year. Hockey families on average spend $2,583 just for one kid to play one season per year. And I want to be clear, I'm not making fun of any parent for doing this. Wanting good things for your kid is one of the most legitimate financial pressures there is. The problem isn't the love. The problem is the lie sitting underneath it. New York Life ran a survey of youth sports parents and found that 49% of them believed their child would receive an athletic scholarship. 49%, half. The actual NCAA data, around 2% of high school athletes get any athletic scholarship at all, and most of those are partial. So you have a 49% confidence rate chasing a 2% outcome. That's not a college fund, that's a casino. And let's run the math, because we have to. $5,000 a year for 12 years of competitive youth sports is $60,000 out of pocket. If you invested that same $5,000 a year at a 7% return, you'd have about $89,000 by the time your kid graduates high school. Leave that alone to compound until you hit 65 and it grows to over $280,000. So the scholarship you were chasing for your kid is actually costing you over $250,000 in your own retirement. And the kid still has to go to college. Trap 4, the whole life insurance pitch. So at some point in your 40s, somebody is going to take you to lunch. It might be your buddy from high school who got into financial services. It might be a guy you met at a networking event. It might be your wife's cousin, which is the most dangerous version because now you can't say no without it being a holiday problem. And what they are going to pitch you is whole life insurance. They're going to call it permanent life insurance. They might call it cash value, infinite banking, IUL, all kinds of names. It is all the same product wearing different hats. Here is what the math actually says. According to industry data from Aflac, a healthy 40-year-old man can buy a 20-year term life policy with a $500,000 death benefit for about $334 per year. The same amount of coverage in whole life, around $6,387 per year. That is roughly 19 times more expensive for the same death benefit, to the same family, underwritten on the same body. Now, the pitch you'll hear is that whole life builds cash value and it's an investment, and the wealthy use it, and it's tax advantaged. Here's what actually happens. The first several years of premium go almost entirely to the agent's commission and the insurance company's expense load. Your cash value crawls forward at a rate that would embarrass a savings account, and if you ever cash it out, the company keeps the death benefit because of course they do. They're a business. Buy the term policy for $334. Take the $6,053 difference, drop it into an S&P 500 index fund every year for 20 years. At a 7% real return, that's roughly $248,000 sitting in your account. Yours, liquid, not on a permission slip from an insurance company. The pitch is not a plan. It's a commission with a tie-on. Trap 5, the garage full of depreciation, and then there are the toys. Look, every man eventually wants something. A boat, an RV, a motorcycle, a jet ski, a side-by-side, a classic car project that's been sitting in the garage for 6 years waiting for the right weekend. This is universal. I'm not telling you to live like a monk, but here's the data, just so we're all working with the same picture. The median age of a boat owner in this country is 54. Same general range for motorcycle owners. RV ownership peaks in the 35 to 54 age bracket, with 11% of households in that range owning one. A new mid-sized travel trailer runs about $40,000 to $60,000. A new bass boat, $50,000 to $80,000. A halfway decent fishing setup with a center console, you can clear six figures without trying. And the math on these things is uniquely savage because they don't just cost what you paid for them. They depreciate roughly 50% in the first 5 years. They cost money to insure. They cost money to store. They cost money to launch, dock, winterize, register, fuel, and repair. The boating community has a saying that I think is one of the most honest things any subculture has ever said about itself. The two happiest days of a boat owner's life are the day they buy it and the day they sell it. A $50,000 boat over 5 years, all in with depreciation, maintenance, slip fees, and insurance, will quietly cost you about $50,000 more than you think. Invest that same number to 65 at 7%, and it's worth about $190,000. The boat doesn't owe you anything, but it also doesn't owe you retirement. Trap 6, the portfolio ego. Now let's talk about the part of this nobody wants to hear. There's a famous study, a real one from 2001 in the Quarterly Journal of Economics called Boys Will Be Boys by Barber and Odean. They looked at the trading behavior of 35,000 households at a discount brokerage. What they found was that men traded 45% more than women, and they earned annual risk-adjusted returns that were 1.4 percentage points lower per year. Single men, they traded 67% more than single women and underperformed by 2.3 percentage points annually. That gap, compounded over 25 years, is roughly 22% less wealth at retirement from doing more. The men were working harder at their portfolios and getting paid less for it, which honestly is the cruelest sentence I've ever written. And the 40s amplify this perfectly because by your 40s, you usually have enough money in the account that you actually have something to mess with. 20-year-old you had $1,400 in a brokerage and couldn't do much damage. 40-year-old you has $180,000 and a strong opinion about lithium stocks. Same psychological trap, but now it's running on more zeros. And then there's sports betting, which is the same disease wearing a Nike pullover. According to the American Gaming Association, the legal U.S. sports betting handle in 2024 was $147.91 billion, of which net bettor losses came out to $13.71 billion, up 25% in 1 year. A 2026 survey from Siena and St. Bonaventure found that 52% of men aged 18 to 49 now have an active sportsbook account on their phone, half of working-age men. Now, you might say, Nick, I only bet $20 on Sunday games. That's not a financial trap. Sure, $20 a week is $1,000 a year. Invested for 20 years at 7%, it's about $43,000. That's not life-changing money, but it's also not nothing. It's a used car, it's most of a wedding, it's a week of retirement income at age 70. The phone makes it look small, the math makes it look bigger. Trap 7, the forever mortgage, quick regrounding before we go on, because I know we've been throwing dollar amounts around like confetti. If a 45-year-old took every single trap we've covered so far and just didn't do it, kept his old car, declined the whole life pitch, told the boat dealer no, indexed his portfolio, skipped the sports book, and put that money into the market instead, he would retire with somewhere north of an extra $1 million from inaction, from simply not buying things. Anyway, back to the carnage. Trap 7. The forever mortgage, you're 45, the kids are getting older, the house feels small, your spouse mentions casually that the kitchen could use an update. You start looking at houses, you find a bigger one, the rate isn't great, but the dream is good, so you sign a fresh 30-year mortgage at age 45. Do you see what just happened? You just agreed to make house payments until you are 75 years old. You have signed up to walk into retirement still owing the bank money on a house, or worse, you do a cash out refi, or you open a HELOC. Experian's data shows the average HELOC balance hit roughly $45,000 in 2024, And the New York Fed says there's over $400 billion in HELOC balances outstanding right now. People are pulling equity out of their houses to fund kitchens, trucks, vacations, kids' college, and the occasional doomed business idea. They are converting an appreciating asset, the house, into a depreciating asset, the truck. That's not refinancing. That's a really expensive yard sale. Trap 8, the catch-up delusion. And finally, we have to talk about the one that wraps all the other ones together, the catch-up delusion. Here's how it sounds in a man's head. Yeah, I haven't saved as much as I should have, but I'm at peak earnings now. I can really pile it in over the next 20 years. I've got time. I'll catch up. Let's actually do that math with kindness. But honestly, you're 45. You have, let's say, the Vanguard median of about $68,000 saved. You commit today to maxing out your 401k at the 2026 limit of $24,500 every single year. No skipped years, no loans, no early withdrawals. You also catch the employer match. You invest it in a low-cost index fund. You earn the long-term market average, about 7% real after inflation. In 20 years, when you're 65, you'll have roughly $1.27 million. Sounds like a lot, right? Now adjust for inflation. In today's dollars, that's about $700,000. Fidelity's standard guidance says you should have 10 times your salary saved by 67. For a $100,000 earner, that's $1 million in today's dollars. You're still short. While doing everything right, starting today. That is the part of the math that nobody wants to look at because it's not a punchline, it's just a quiet reality. The catch-up window is real, but it's narrower than men in their 40s want to admit. Every year you delay starting to take this seriously is a year you'll never compound back. The good news, and there is some, is that doing the math early gives you options. You can keep working a few more years. You can downsize the house. You can skip the boat. You can take the $6,000 a year you are going to give to a whole life agent and put it in an index fund. You have levers. You just have to actually pull them. The trap isn't being behind. The trap is pretending you're not. Real quick before we wrap. If you've been watching this and thinking, I should be making videos like this myself, I actually built a completely free community where I walk through exactly how to start and scale a faceless YouTube channel the same way I built this one. I share the scripts, the tools, the workflow, everything. The link is in the description. It's free. No pitch, no upsell. If you've ever thought about building income on the side that doesn't depend on your day job, come check it out. Now back to the close. So look, the reason nobody warns men about any of this is that everybody profits from you not knowing. The truck dealer profits, the insurance agent profits, the youth sports complex profits, the mortgage broker profits, the sports book profits, the boat dealer profits. The whole machine is calibrated beautifully to convert the peak earning years of the American man into other people's revenue. The good news is the math is symmetrical. The same compound interest that destroys you when you ignore it works in your favor the second you respect it. The 40s aren't doomed, they're just leveraged. Everything you do has a bigger effect in both directions because the time horizon is shorter and the income is bigger. So don't buy the truck, don't buy the whole life, don't sign the 30-year mortgage at 50, don't bet the parlay, and don't pretend the catch-up math is going to fix itself. If this video made you flinch even once, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.